The stars flickered as the UES Defiant tore through the fabric of space, emerging from hyperspace like a phantom in the night. The massive warship, nearly a mile long, represented humanity's greatest achievement, and perhaps its last hope. Inside the bridge, Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced windows that separated him from the endless void of space. "Status report," Walker said, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. The bridge crew, just 15 of the total 150 aboard, worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. "All systems operational, Captain," replied Thomas, the ship's lead engineer. "The stealth systems are holding steady, and our new shield modifications are running at optimal levels." He paused, checking his displays. "But I should remind you that we've never tested them in actual combat." Walker nodded. They hadn't had time to test much of anything. The Stellar Empire's invasion had come swiftly and brutally, overwhelming humanity's outer colonies one by one. Earth's fleet, spread thin across dozens of systems, had been caught off guard and destroyed piecemeal. Now, only the Defiant stood between the Empire and Earth itself. "Sensor report," Walker called out, moving to the central holographic display that dominated the bridge. The massive screen showed their position relative to Imperial space, a vast territory that stretched across thousands of light years. "Long-range sensors are picking up the Imperial Armada," answered Lisa from her station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she brought up detailed scans. 10,000 ships, just as our intelligence reported. They're moving in standard Imperial formation, heading directly for the Sol system. The bridge fell silent as the information sank in. 10,000 ships against one. The Empire's fleet was a sight that had brought hundreds of alien civilizations to their knees over 3,000 years. Each Imperial vessel was a marvel of engineering, powered by technology that humanity had only begun to understand. But Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Empire, for all its power and history, had grown complacent. They expected every race they encountered to fight the same way they did, with massive fleets meeting in open space, following the strict rules of engagement that the Empire had established millennia ago. "Tell me about their formation," Walker said, zooming in on the holographic display. The Imperial ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, like a giant mathematical equation given form in space. "Classic Imperial Wolfpack formation," answered Mark, the tactical officer. "They're arranged in layers, with their heaviest warships forming a sphere around their command vessels. Smaller ships patrol the outer edges. It's the same formation they've used for the past 1,000 years. And that's exactly why we're going to beat them," Walker said, addressing his crew. "The Empire hasn't faced a serious challenge in centuries. They'd forgotten how to adapt, how to think differently." He touched the display, highlighting key points in the Imperial formation. "They expect us to either surrender or die gloriously in a hopeless battle. They don't expect us to fight smart." A light began blinking on the engineering console. "Captain," Thomas called out, "we're receiving the automated Imperial surrender demand. Standard message: submit to Imperial authority or face complete annihilation." Walker stepped back to his command chair, settling into it with deliberate calmness. "Send no response. Let them think their message was lost in space. Meanwhile, plot a course that will take us behind that outer patrol line. We're going to show the Empire why humanity has survived every challenge we've ever faced." The Defiant moved silently through space, its revolutionary stealth systems making it nearly invisible to Imperial sensors. The massive ship, despite its size, produced no more energy signature than a small asteroid. This was humanity's secret weapon, technology developed not through millennia of gradual advancement like the Empire, but through desperate innovation in the face of extinction. As they approached the Imperial fleet, Walker studied the enemy ships through the enhanced viewing screens. The Imperial vessels were beautiful in their own way, all sweeping lines and golden hulls that reflected the starlight. They were designed to inspire awe and fear in equal measure. But Walker saw something else. He saw arrogance given physical form. "Ready all weapons," Walker commanded, "but hold fire until my mark. We're not here to start a battle. We're here to start a war of nerves." He turned to his communication officer. "Is the package ready?" "Yes, sir," came the response. "Ready to broadcast on all Imperial frequencies." Walker nodded. The package was a carefully crafted message, designed to do something the Empire had never experienced in its 3,000 years of conquest: make them afraid. "Take us in closer," Walker ordered. The Defiant slipped between two Imperial patrol ships, close enough to see the crews moving behind their illuminated windows. No alarms sounded. No weapons turned to track them. They were invisible, a ghost ship sliding through the heart of the mightiest fleet in known space. "Sir," Lisa called out, her voice tight with tension, "we're picking up communications from the Imperial command ship. They're ordering the fleet to begin acceleration toward Earth. They're starting their attack run." "Perfect timing," Walker said. "Send the package. All frequencies, maximum power." Across every Imperial ship, every communication device, every screen and holographic display, the same image appeared: detailed scans of Imperial ship designs, defense configurations, and patrol routes. Along with the data was a simple message: "We see you. We know you. We can reach you anywhere." The effect was immediate. The perfectly ordered Imperial formation rippled as ships began breaking formation, commanders ordering emergency scans and defensive maneuvers. The Empire had never faced an enemy that could penetrate their security so completely, could stand invisible in their midst. Multiple emergency signals being broadcast, Lisa reported, trying to hide a smile. "They're trying to figure out how we got this information. Several ships are reporting possible system breaches." Walker stood, walking to the front of the bridge to watch the chaos unfold. "The Empire has spent 3,000 years teaching everyone to fear them," he said quietly. "They've forgotten what it feels like to be afraid themselves. That changes today." The Defiant hung in space, watching as the mighty Imperial Armada scrambled to respond to a threat they couldn't see or understand. In the confusion, 3 Imperial ships collided, their perfect formation shattered by panic. Others fired weapons at sensor ghosts, their crews jumping at shadows. "Take us out," Walker ordered as the chaos reached its peak. "Nice and slow. Let them wonder if we're still there, watching them." He turned to his crew, seeing the hope in their eyes that had replaced the fear of just hours before. "The Empire thinks that power comes from size, from numbers, from brute force. We're going to teach them that real power comes from here." He tapped his temple, and from here, he placed a hand over his heart. As the Defiant slipped away into the darkness of space, Walker knew that this was just the beginning. The Empire had never lost a war because they had never faced an enemy who understood that victory doesn't always come from destroying your opponent. Sometimes victory comes from making them destroy themselves. Behind them, the Imperial Armada's advance toward Earth had stopped. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Empire faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and therefore couldn't defeat. The mighty Empire had taken its first step toward learning what every human knew from birth: that the universe's greatest power isn't strength, but the ability to adapt, to think differently, and to turn apparent weakness into unconquerable strength. 3 days after their first encounter with the Imperial fleet, the UEA's Defiant hung silently in the shadow of a massive gas giant. The huge planet storms helped mask their presence, though Walker knew they hardly needed the help. The Empire's ships had been searching frantically for them, but their stealth technology remained unbeatable. "Show me the supply route again," Walker said, studying the holographic display. A red line appeared, marking the path that Imperial supply ships used to support their massive invasion fleet. Without these supply lines, the mighty Armada would be stopped as surely as if they'd been destroyed in battle. "Next convoy is due in 6 hours, Mark reported from his tactical station. 5 supply ships, 2 escort cruisers. Standard Imperial procedure." He paused, checking his readings. They're running scared, Captain. The escorts used to be light frigates. Now they're using heavy cruisers. Walker nodded, satisfied. Fear was spreading through the Imperial ranks exactly as he planned. Every ship that moved through Imperial space now did so with the knowledge that the ghost ship called Defiant might be watching, might be waiting to strike. Engineering. How are we looking? Walker asked, knowing they'd pushed their systems hard during the past days of constant stealth operations. All green, Captain. Thomas replied proudly. The crew's got maintenance down to an art now. We can run silent for another 2 weeks if we need to. He didn't mention the fact that they'd been sleeping in shifts, working around the clock to keep their experimental systems running perfectly. Lisa's voice cut through the quiet bridge. Captain, intercepting Imperial communications. They're fascinating. She worked quickly to translate the messages. The Imperial commanders are fighting among themselves. 3 different escort commanders are claiming they saw us in 3 different systems. They're accusing each other of incompetence. Perfect, Walker said softly. The Empire's greatest weakness is their pride. They can't admit when they're wrong, can't accept that someone might be better than them at anything. He stood from his command chair, walking to the main viewport. Time to push them harder. Prepare for attack run. The Defiant moved silently through space, approaching the supply route like a shark closing in on its prey. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, everyone knowing their role in the complex dance they were about to perform. They'd done this twice already in the past 3 days, each attack carefully planned to cause maximum psychological impact. Supply convoy entering sensor range, Mark announced. Right on schedule. Imperial precision working against them again. Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Empire's rigid adherence to schedules and procedures made them predictable. Predictability in space warfare was as good as painting a target on your ships. Take us in. Standard attack pattern. Walker's voice was calm, but everyone on the bridge felt the tension rise. Each attack was a risk, each encounter a chance that the Empire might get lucky and spot them. The Defiant glided between the escort cruisers, completely invisible to their sensors. Walker watched through the viewing screen as they passed close enough to see individual windows on the Imperial ships. The massive cruisers, each one nearly the size of the Defiant, swept their sensors back and forth, searching for threats they could sense but not see. In position, Mark reported. All weapons locked on target. Walker took a deep breath. Execute. The Defiant's stealth field dropped for exactly 3 seconds. In that time, precision-guided missiles streaked out from hidden launchers, each one targeting a specific system on the supply ships. The Empire's ships, designed to fight battles of brute force, never had a chance to raise their shields. Explosions rippled across the supply ships' hulls, not destroying them, but precisely crippling their engines, weapons, and communications. The escort cruisers spun in place, their sensors finally detecting the Defiant, but by then the human ship was already gone, its stealth field back in place. Clean hits on all targets, Mark reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. Supply ships are dead in space. Escort cruisers are launching fighters, but they're shooting blind. Send the message, Walker ordered. Lisa transmitted their prepared broadcast. On every Imperial ship in range, screens lit up with the same message. Your supplies are now our supplies. Your ships are now our targets. The ghost is always watching. The bridge crew watched as panic spread through the Imperial formation. The escort cruisers began firing randomly into space, their powerful weapons harmlessly passing through areas where they thought the Defiant might be. Fighter craft zoomed in all directions, their pilots desperately searching for an enemy they had no hope of finding. Imperial reinforcements incoming, Lisa reported. They're calling every combat ship within 3 light years. 8 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers. She paused, listening to more transmissions. They're arguing about who's in command. Each captain is claiming they have priority. Walker nodded, everything going according to plan. Time to add to their confusion. Engineering, prepare for Phase 2. Thomas's fingers flew across his console. "Ready, Captain. Though I still say this is crazy." "Crazy is exactly what we need," Walker replied. "Execute." The Defiant's experimental systems shifted into a configuration that had never been tested in combat before. Instead of merely hiding from sensors, they began broadcasting false signals, creating sensor ghosts that looked exactly like the Defiant. Suddenly, the Imperial ship's sensors showed 5 Defiant-class vessels surrounding them. The Empire's carefully organized response dissolved into chaos. Ships turned to face different threats. Commanders shouted contradictory orders, and in the confusion, 3 Imperial vessels collided, their shields flaring as they scraped against each other. Multiple distress calls, Lisa reported, trying to track all the communications. Half the Imperial commanders think they're under attack by a human battle fleet. The others are trying to convince them it's not real. She looked up at Walker. "They're completely disorganized." "That's what happens when you spend 3,000 years thinking you're invincible," Walker said. "You forget how to handle being afraid." He watched as more Imperial ships arrived, adding to the confusion rather than helping to resolve it. "Take us out, nice and slow. Let them keep chasing shadows." The Defiant slipped away, leaving behind a scene of chaos. The mighty Imperial warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets, were reduced to shooting at sensor ghosts and jumping at shadows. The supply convoy, carrying fuel and ammunition that the invasion fleet desperately needed, would now have to be rescued and repaired, causing delays that the Empire couldn't afford. As they reached safe distance, Walker addressed his crew. "The Empire thinks they lost today because we have better stealth technology. But that's not why we won. We won because they can't imagine anyone being better than them at anything." That pride, that inability to adapt or admit weakness, that's what we're really fighting. The bridge crew nodded, understanding. They'd just watched the mightiest military force in known space fall apart because they couldn't handle an enemy that didn't fight the way they expected. The Empire had spent so long being the strongest that they'd forgotten how to be smart. "Get some rest," Walker ordered his crew. "Tomorrow we hit another convoy, and another the day after that. Every day we'll show the Empire that all their power, all their ships, all their technology means nothing against an enemy they can't understand." As the crew began their rest rotation, Walker remained on the bridge, watching the distant flares of Imperial ships still firing at phantoms. He knew that somewhere in the Empire's vast fleet, someone would be learning from this, trying to understand how a single human ship could cause so much chaos. That person would be dangerous, would be a real threat. But for now, the Empire's own pride would keep them from listening to anyone who suggested they might need to change. The Defiant had become more than just a ship. It had become fear itself, a ghost that haunted the dreams of Imperial commanders. And fear, Walker knew, was the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. The Imperial command ship Eternal Glory floated in space, its golden hull reflecting the light of nearby stars. Commander Reed stood at its main viewport, his hands clasped behind his back, as he studied the holographic displays showing the Empire's recent defeats. For 2 weeks, the human ship Defiant had struck at will, disappearing like smoke each time the Empire's forces tried to respond. "Show me the pattern again," Reed ordered. Unlike his fellow commanders, who raged at their inability to catch the ghost ship, Reed had spent days studying every encounter, every attack. He had done something no Imperial commander had done in centuries. He had started learning from his enemy. "Sir, there is no pattern," his subordinate replied nervously. "The human ship appears randomly. We cannot predict." "There is always a pattern," Reed interrupted. "We simply haven't learned to see it yet." He walked to the central tactical display, where red dots marked each of the Defiant's attacks. "These humans, they think differently from us. We must learn to think as they do." Aboard the Defiant, Captain Walker was facing challenges of his own. The constant stealth operations had pushed their systems to the limit. The crew was tired, working endless hours to keep their technological edge over the Empire. Status report. Walker called out, noting the dark circles under his crew's eyes. Main stealth systems at 60%. Captain, Thomas reported from engineering. We can't keep running them continuously like this. We need at least 12 hours of downtime for proper maintenance. Walker nodded grimly. They'd known this would happen eventually. No ship, no matter how advanced, could operate at peak performance indefinitely. Options. There's a debris field from an old battle. Mark suggested from tactical. Lots of metal and radiation. It would help mask our signature while we do repairs. Make it happen, Walker ordered. The Defiant changed course, sliding through space toward the distant debris field. They'd destroyed or disabled 15 Imperial supply convoys in 2 weeks. The Empire's mighty invasion fleet was starting to feel the strain, their ships running low on fuel and ammunition. But as the Defiant approached the debris field, Lisa's voice cut through the bridge's quiet. Captain, multiple Imperial ships dropping out of hyperspace. Walker spun toward the tactical display. 5 Imperial heavy cruisers had appeared, their formation unlike anything they'd seen before. Instead of the Empire's usual rigid patterns, these ships moved flexibly, covering each other's blind spots. They're using our tactics, Walker realized, a chill running down his spine. Someone in their command structure is learning. The Imperial ships launched clouds of sensor drones, flooding the area with scanning beams. The Defiant's stealth systems, already strained from weeks of continuous operation, struggled to compensate for the increased scrutiny. Engineering, status. Walker demanded as warning lights began flashing across multiple stations. Stealth systems failing, Thomas reported, his fingers flying across his controls. Too many sensor beams, too many frequencies to mask. We need to shut down for a reset, or we'll burn out completely. Walker's mind raced. For the first time, they faced an Imperial commander who thought like a human, adapting, learning, using their own tactics against them. The debris field that was supposed to be their shelter had become a trap. New transmission, Lisa announced. It's different from their usual demands. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in carefully practiced human English. To the crew of the UES Defiant, I am Commander Reed of the Imperial Fleet. Your tactics have taught us much. You have earned the right to surrender with honor. End this hunt now, and your lives will be spared. Walker smiled grimly. He really has been studying us. He's trying to think like a human. He turned to his crew. But he's still thinking like an Imperial, trying to script everything. Time to show him how humans really fight. Sir, we can't maintain stealth, Thomas warned. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Walker nodded. Drop the stealth field. All power to weapons and shields. As his crew stared at him in shock, he smiled. They want to learn how humans fight. Let's teach them. The Defiant flickered into visibility, its stealth field dissolving to reveal the massive warship in all its glory. The Imperial ships immediately moved to surround them, but Walker had already put his plan into motion. Launch all drones, he ordered. The Defiant released dozens of small automated craft, but instead of attacking, the drones flew into the debris field, their engines scattering the ancient wreckage in all directions. Massive sensor interference, Lisa reported. The debris is creating thousands of false readings. The Imperial ship's neat formation broke apart as they tried to track multiple threats at once. Reed had learned to think differently, but his crews were still bound by centuries of Imperial training. They couldn't handle the chaos, couldn't adapt quickly enough to the changing situation. Now show them why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, Walker commanded. Full attack run. The Defiant exploded into action, its engines pushing it to maximum acceleration. Instead of trying to hide, they charged straight at the nearest Imperial cruiser. The Empire's ships had been designed to fight at long range, their weapons optimized for battles fought across thousands of kilometers. They weren't prepared for an enemy that would fight at point-blank range. They're trying to lock weapons, Mark reported, excitement in his voice. The debris is confusing their targeting systems. The Defiant roared past the first Imperial cruiser, so close that the crews could see each other through their viewports. The human ship's guns fired continuously, not trying to destroy their massive opponent, but targeting specific systems. Weapons, sensors, engines. Hard about, Walker ordered as they passed. Same again. Keep them reacting, don't give them time to think. The Defiant spun in space, a maneuver that Imperial ships of its size weren't supposed to be able to perform. They struck again and again, darting between the Imperial ships like a wolf among larger, slower prey. Each pass caused more damage. Each attack forced the Imperial ships to respond to a situation their training hadn't prepared them for. Imperial ships breaking formation, Lisa reported. 3 cruisers have significant damage. They're calling for reinforcements. Walker nodded. They've learned to think differently, but they haven't learned to trust their new thinking yet. The moment things go wrong, they fall back on their old ways. He turned to engineering. How are our systems? Better, Thomas replied. The break from stealth operations let the systems cool down. We can reactivate stealth in 5 minutes. Perfect timing, Walker said as more Imperial ships appeared at the edge of their sensor range. Let them see us win this fight. Then we vanish and let their imagination do our work for us. The Defiant made one final pass through the Imperial formation, its guns blazing. When it emerged on the other side, all 5 of Reed's cruisers were damaged. Their neat formation shattered, their crews shaken by combat unlike anything in Imperial records. Stealth systems ready, Thomas reported. Broadcast on all frequencies, Walker ordered. Let them hear this before we disappear. Lisa transmitted their message. You tried to learn our ways, Commander Reed, but you forgot the most important lesson. Humans don't follow patterns. We create them, break them, and create new ones. We'll be watching your fleet, and next time, we'll have something new for you to learn. 1 month had passed since the UES Defiant first appeared in Imperial space. What had begun as a desperate mission by a single warship had evolved into something much more dangerous, a revolution of ideas. Captain Walker stood on the bridge, watching the holographic display that showed the current state of the Empire's territory. Show me the rebellion zones again, Walker said. Red dots appeared across the map, marking places where subject species had begun rising up against Imperial rule. What had once been a few isolated incidents had spread like wildfire across dozens of star systems. 27 major uprisings, Lisa reported. And those are just the ones big enough for us to detect. Our broadcasts of Imperial defeats have reached over 200 systems now. Walker nodded with satisfaction. This had always been part of the plan, not just to stop the Empire's invasion fleet, but to show the galaxy that the mighty Empire wasn't invincible. Hope was spreading among species that had lived under Imperial control for centuries. Imperial command ship detected, Mark announced from Tactical. It's Reed again. He's brought a full battle group, 30 ships, including their new hunter-killer vessels. Walker moved to the main viewport, watching as the Imperial formation took shape at the edge of the system. Unlike the rigid patterns the Empire had used a month ago, this formation was fluid, adaptive. Reed had been learning. He's good, Walker admitted. He's adapted faster than any of the other Imperial commanders. He studied the formation, noting how the smaller ships moved in unpredictable patterns, while the larger vessels maintained a defensive core. He's using our own tactics against us, but with Imperial resources. Captain, Thomas called from engineering, concern in his voice. I'm detecting unusual sensor activity. They're using a new type of scanning technology, something we haven't seen before. Walker frowned. Can our stealth systems handle it? Thomas worked his controls, running simulations. I think so, but it's going to be close. They're clearly designed specifically to detect our stealth field. Lisa looked up from her communication station. Incoming transmission from Commander Reed. The bridge screens lit up with the image of Reed, his imperial uniform pristine, his expression calm but determined. "Captain Walker, yes, we know your name now. We know much about you and your ship." Walker kept his face neutral, not showing his surprise that the Empire had learned his identity. "Commander Reed, I see you've brought friends, afraid to face us alone again." Reed smiled slightly. "I've learned from you, Captain. Humans use every advantage they have. Only a fool fights with one arm tied behind his back." His expression grew more serious. "Your campaign has been impressive. You've hurt us, made us question methods that have served us for millennia. But it ends today." The transmission cut off, and Walker turned to his crew. "He's trying to get in our heads. Time to show him that humans don't rattle easily." He moved to the tactical station. "What's he really up to? This isn't just about catching us." Mark studied the Imperial deployment. "They're forming a perimeter around this entire sector. And look," he highlighted several ships on the display. "These vessels are broadcasting powerful signals on all frequencies. They're trying to blanket the area with communications." "They want to stop our broadcasts," Walker realized. "They know we've been inspiring rebellions. They're trying to cut off the flow of information." He smiled grimly. "Which means we're hurting them worse than we thought." The bridge crew exchanged looks of determination. What had started as a mission to delay the invasion fleet had become something much bigger. They were changing the Empire itself, forcing it to confront its own weaknesses. "New Imperial ships arriving," Mark reported suddenly. "Dozens of them. They're creating a full blockade of the system." Walker studied the tactical display, watching as more Imperial ships arrived. Reed was committing massive resources to this trap, far more than should be necessary to catch a single human warship. Something didn't add up. Why commit so many ships to catch us? Walker wondered aloud. Unless, his eyes widened in realization, unless they know what we've been planning next. He turned to Lisa. "Any word from our allies?" Lisa checked her communications. Last transmission from the Krull resistance was 6 hours ago. They were preparing for the operation as planned. Walker's mind raced. The plan had been their most ambitious yet, coordinating with 3 different resistance movements to simultaneously strike at Imperial fuel depots. If Reed knew about it, all those resistance fighters would be walking into a trap. "We need to warn them," Walker said. "But if we break stealth to send a message, Reed will have us." The crew fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Thousands of resistance fighters could die if they didn't warn them. But if the Defiant was caught, Earth would lose its last defender. "There's another way," Thomas said quietly. Everyone turned to look at the engineer. "We've been working on a modification to our communication systems. We can send a narrow-beam transmission that might slip through their sensors, but," he hesitated, "we'd have to get dangerously close to one of their ships." Walker didn't hesitate. "Plot the course. We're not letting those resistance fighters die." The Defiant moved silently through the Imperial blockade, its stealth systems straining against the new scanning technology. Every crew member held their breath as they slipped between massive Imperial warships, close enough to see individual weapons emplacements on their hulls. "In position," Mark whispered, though there was no need to keep his voice down. "Nearest Imperial ship is only 5 kilometers away." "Send the warning," Walker ordered. "Narrow beam, encrypted, resistance frequencies only." The message was sent, a tiny sliver of data slipping past the Imperial blockade. But as the transmission completed, alarms blared across the Defiance bridge. "They've detected us," Thomas shouted. The new sensors picked up our transmission. The nearest Imperial ship immediately opened fire, massive energy weapons slicing through space where the Defiant had been moments before. The human ship's engines roared to life, pushing it away from the attack. "All ships converging on our position," Mark reported, his voice tight with tension. "They're using a search pattern we haven't seen before. Reed must have been planning this for weeks." Walker gripped the arms of his command chair. "Full evasive maneuvers. Use the debris from their own shots for cover. The Defiant rolled and twisted through space, dodging the increasingly accurate Imperial fire. Reed had indeed learned from their previous encounters, anticipating the human ship's movements and countering their usual tactics. Engine hit. Thomas called out as the ship shuddered under Imperial fire. Stealth systems failing. We can't maintain the field. The Defiant flickered into visibility, its stealth systems offline. Immediately, dozens of Imperial weapons locked onto the human vessel. Walker knew they couldn't win this fight through conventional means. They were outgunned and surrounded. All power to forward shields, Walker ordered. Set course directly for Reed's command ship. His crew stared at him in disbelief. "Sir," Mark questioned. "They expect us to run, to hide," Walker explained. "So we're going to do the opposite. We're going straight for their commander." The Defiant surged forward, absorbing punishing fire from all sides as it charged toward the Imperial command ship. Reed, seeing the human vessel barreling toward him, ordered his ship to take evasive action. But the massive Imperial vessel couldn't move quickly enough. "Broadcast on all frequencies," Walker commanded. "I want every ship in this sector to hear this." Lisa opened the channels, and Walker spoke clearly and confidently. "Commander Reed, you've learned to fight like humans. Now learn to think like humans. Look at your tactical display, count your ships, then look at what those ships are supposed to be protecting." Across Imperial space, communications officers heard the transmission and relayed it to their commanders. Reed, his eyes widening, rushed to his main tactical display. While his entire battle group had been focused on trapping the Defiant, the Imperial home fleet had been drawn away from its normal patrol routes. The fuel depots, supposedly the targets of the resistance attack, had been a decoy. "Check the Imperial Palace defenses," Reed ordered, sudden understanding dawning on his face. Reports flooded in. Palace defenses were under attack, but not by resistance fighters. The real attack was coming from within, from Imperial citizens inspired by the Defiant's broadcasts. People who had never questioned Imperial rule were now rising up, demanding change. As the Defiant raced toward Reed's command ship, Walker continued his broadcast. "You've spent a month chasing one ship, Commander. But we weren't just fighting you with the Defiant. We were fighting you with an idea. The idea that the Empire isn't invincible, that change is possible. And ideas, Commander Reed, are much harder to kill than ships." Reed watched in shock as reports of civil unrest flooded in from across Imperial space. The Defiant had never been the real threat. It had simply been the spark that lit a much larger fire. A fire that was now burning through the very heart of the Empire. The Imperial Palace shimmered in the light of twin suns, its golden spires reaching toward the sky, like fingers grasping for the stars themselves. For 3,000 years, it had stood as the unquestioned center of power in the galaxy. No enemy had ever reached its hallowed halls. No challenge to its authority had ever succeeded. Until today. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the 12 High Lords of the Empire sat in stunned silence as reports continued to flood in. 43 systems in open rebellion. 17 Imperial fleet groups refusing orders. And most shocking of all, crowds of Imperial citizens gathering in the streets of the capital itself, demanding reforms that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "How did it come to this?" asked the eldest of the High Lords, his voice quavering with age and disbelief. "How could one human ship cause so much chaos?" The Imperial Intelligence Director rose from his seat, his face grave. "My lords, it was never about the ship. The humans understood something we have forgotten, that our greatest strength was also our greatest weakness." He activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the spread of rebellions across Imperial space. "For 3,000 years, we have ruled through power and fear. We made the galaxy afraid of us. The humans simply taught them not to be afraid anymore." In deep space, far from the Imperial capital, the UES Defiant limped through the darkness. The battle with Reed's forces had left the ship badly damaged. Life support was functioning on backup systems, and the main engines could manage only a fraction of their normal power. But they had survived, escaping the Imperial trap through a combination of daring and desperation. Captain Walker stood on the bridge, looking at the faces of his exhausted crew. They had accomplished something no one thought possible. A single human ship had changed the course of galactic history. "Damage report," Walker asked, his voice rough from smoke inhalation after a fire had broken out on the lower decks. "Not good," Thomas replied from engineering. "Main propulsion at 30%. Stealth systems completely offline. Weapons at 50%. He managed a tired smile. "But we're still flying, Captain." Walker nodded. They had known this mission might be one way. The fact that they were alive at all was a testament to their crew's skill and determination. "Captain," Lisa called from communications, excitement breaking through her exhaustion. "Incoming transmission from Earth. They're saying the Imperial invasion fleet has stopped advancing. They're holding position at the edge of our solar system." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. After weeks of fighting, the news seemed almost too good to believe. "More than that," Lisa continued, her eyes wide as she processed the incoming data. "The Imperial High Command has sent an official request for negotiations." She looked up, meeting Walker's gaze. "Captain, they want to talk peace." Walker moved to the main viewport, looking out at the stars. "They've realized that even if they destroy Earth, they can't destroy what we've started. The Empire is facing rebellions on too many fronts. They can't fight everyone at once." "Incoming transmission," Lisa announced. "It's from Commander Reed's ship." The bridge screens activated, showing Reed's face. The Imperial commander looked tired, the perfect composure of their first meeting, now replaced by the weariness of a man who had fought hard and learned difficult lessons. "Captain Walker," Reed began, his voice formal but lacking its earlier condescension. "The Imperial High Council has authorized me to establish a direct communication channel for preliminary discussions regarding a potential cessation of hostilities." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "In simple terms, Commander, they want to talk peace." Reed's expression remained carefully neutral, but Walker thought he saw a flicker of respect in the Imperial's eyes. "Yes, recent events have caused a revaluation of Imperial policy regarding Earth and other non-Imperial worlds." "Recent events," Walker repeated. "You mean the fact that a single human warship made your entire empire question itself? That people throughout Imperial space are demanding change." Reed's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I have been instructed to arrange a meeting between representatives of Earth and the Imperial High Council. The meeting would take place on neutral ground, with full diplomatic protocols in effect." Walker considered this. It could be a trap, but his instincts told him otherwise. The Empire was pragmatic above all else. If continuing the war threatened their hold on power, they would seek peace, at least until they could regain control of their rebellious systems. "We'll bring your offer back to Earth," Walker said. "But understand this, Commander, we won't accept a peace that leaves the Empire free to threaten us in the future. And we won't abandon the people who have risen up against Imperial rule." Reed's expression changed slightly, something like surprise crossing his features. "You truly care about the rebel worlds. They are not your people." "That's the difference between us, Commander," Walker replied. "You divide the galaxy into your people and others. We see all sentient beings as having the right to determine their own future." He leaned forward slightly. "Remember that when your High Council is deciding what terms to offer." The transmission ended, and Walker turned to his crew. "Set course for Earth. It's time to go home." As the Defiant limped toward Earth, Walker spent long hours in his quarters, thinking about what they had accomplished and what might come next. They had saved Earth, at least for now, but they had also started something much bigger, a fundamental change in how the galaxy viewed the Empire. 3 days later, the Defiant approached Earth's orbit. The planet's defensive fleet moved to escort them home, ships flashing their lights in salute to the vessel that had accomplished the impossible. As they made their final approach, Lisa called Walker to the communication station. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy," she said, wonder in her voice. "Messages from worlds we've never contacted before. They've all heard about the Defiant, about what we did." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "They're calling us the ship that changed the stars." Walker looked around at his crew, seeing in their faces the pride of people who knew they had made history. "The Empire will try to regain control," he warned them. "This isn't over. Peace talks could take years, and the Empire won't give up its power easily." "But something has changed," Thomas said from his station. "They can't go back to how things were. Too many people have seen that the Empire can be challenged." Walker nodded. "That's our real victory. Not defeating their ships or disrupting their supply lines, but showing the galaxy that change is possible." He moved to the main viewport, watching as Earth grew larger in their view. "The Empire built its power on the idea that resistance was futile. We showed everyone that one ship, one crew willing to think differently, could change everything." As the Defiant settled into orbit around Earth, news of their arrival spread across the planet. In cities and towns across the world, people gathered to celebrate the ship that had saved humanity from imperial conquest. But in quiet conversations, in government halls and military bases, the discussions focused on what would come next.